What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's happening to the economic calendar thus far, as we have a very important day tomorrow because the CPI data is coming out in the morning. So I want to break all of that down, talk about some earnings that just came out, and give you guys some price predictions for tomorrow. Before I begin down all this information, before I talk about what the charts are suggesting and how things are looking in my opinion, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening to the markets. Looking at SPY, in my early videos, I was saying that SPY may have a little bit more downside going into today, and that is what happened. SPY did come down to our target exactly at 508.5. I had this marked since yesterday that if SPY lost 410, it watched 508.5, and that's where we bounced at. In the morning, I said that SPY should also be bouncing off either 507.5 or 508.5, one of those two, and ended up being 508.5. In my second video from today, I said there's a falling wedge on SPY. You guys can see in my previous video, and as you guys know, falling wedges tend to lead to bullish outcomes. That made me start leaning in favor of bulls for CPI. If you don't believe me, just watch my previous videos. I said the market may start pushing, especially after CPI. Now, with this happening, I'm going to talk about CPI, what the numbers are basically looking like, how this can end up affecting the charts, as I have some important predictions to discuss, and what's happening with earnings. But let's first talk about the data before I break down these charts. So for the data, okay, it's coming out tomorrow, which is going to be Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, an hour before the market opens, we have core CPI and CPI data coming out. Here are the expectations. So for CPI for all items, right? Now, CPI, as you guys know, it's very manipulated. I'm not saying that all this data is 100% accurate. I believe in all of it. I'm simply stating that this is what the data is telling us, and we have to go based off of it because this is how the market's going to respond. So, that being said, we're expecting CPI to be, based off the consensus in the forecast, between 3.1 and 3.2%. That's year over year for all items. Now, if CPI is above 3.3%, that's going to be bearish. If it's aligned with the expectations or below them, that could be more bullish for the markets. All right, so that's what we're expecting, around 3.1, 3.2% or below that. For CPI month over month, we want this to be between 0.4 and 0.3%, somewhere in that range. I would say we're going to probably be looking at like 0.3% or lower to be more bullish. If it's around 0.4% or higher, that's a little bit more bearish. For core CPI year over year, okay, and this one I think is more important because this is what's been a lot more sticky. We want this to be between 3.7 and 3.8%. If it's 3.9% or higher, that's going to be bearish for the markets. If it's below 3.8%, like at 3.7, 3.6, that's going to be bullish. All right, so we want low numbers. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. We just want all the numbers to be low. 0.3% is what we want for core CPI month over month, and we'll see if we end up getting that. Now, what does the data suggest? Well, thus far, when looking at the way things have been moving, there's this big downtrend in the data. This does not mean prices are going down, though, right? This does not mean we're in straight up deflation. We're not really seeing that. We're seeing what's known as disinflation, or at least some signals of that. So, what does this mean? Basically, prices are still going up. They're going up, but the rate at which they're going up is what's slowing down. That's what CPI is kind of encompassing right over here, according to the data at least. Right? I'm not saying it's objectively true. I'm just saying based off what the data is telling us. So CPI suggested that a lot of prices, they were basically increased by 7% back around January. That's what the CPI was, the inflation rate, January 2023. And then as of the latest, January 2024, that went down to about 3%. So they increased by 3% instead of 7%. They're increasing at a slower rate. The Fed wants to get this down to 2%, but it's not just for CPI for all items. It's also based off core. So what we could say from this trend is that with this downtrend, there's a very good chance that since CPI during the last report was just barely above 3%, CPI will most likely be close to expectations. For core CPI, it's a little tricky since this is a lot more sticky, so that's what's making me a little bit more concerned. I do have some hope it's going to retrace just a bit towards like 3.8%, maybe lower. So with core, I'm not as certain, but with all items, it does seem very probable that we're going to get a decent CPI. So the odds do favor a decent CPI for all items and everything overall. For some earnings, let's just go over this kind of quickly. We have Oracle announcing earnings today after the market is closed, and then Asana and just a couple of others. For tomorrow, before the market opens, we have Kohl's and a few others, and more retail out there like Dollar General, Dick's Sporting Goods. We have Dollar Tree on Wednesday, and earnings like these, but nothing's too crazy, nothing too huge. How did Oracle do? They did relatively well because the CEO basically came out and said that they expect to continue receiving large contracts reserving cloud infrastructure capacity because the demand for their Gen 2 AI infrastructure exceeds supply big time. So that's good news for them. Their profit was actually pretty decent overall. And we actually have the earnings. Let me see, like right here. So the share price is up because earnings were at $1.41. That's the EPS per share. And we also had that as a beat, and revenue is at 13.28 billion. That is close to expectations. So with decent earnings overall, good demand for their products with AI growth, and overall their cloud services was doing well. Good growth overall. They had some pretty good earnings, I would say, and this is why the share price was up quite a bit. Now, on the other hand, Asana had its earnings. They actually did not do as great. It was kind of mixed overall. So they didn't miss, excuse me, they had a loss of about 4 cents per share. That was actually not as bad as expected. That's a slight improvement. They also had decent earnings overall. Their profitability was still not there, however, and that's I think the reason why the share price is still down. So for their consensus, they're still estimating that there's going to be a loss for the year, which is not the best of news. They still have a negative forecasted EPS at least for the year, and that's for the fiscal year, despite revenue being decent. So the fact that they're not in profitability yet, I think, is why the share price is still kind of down, despite earnings being kind of decent overall. Now, for the market as a whole, the market was at extreme greed. Now it's being reduced a bit, but this could still shift. The market has dropped quite a bit. SPY used to be at 518. It just reached 508 today before trying to bounce. So it dropped already quite a bit. We'll see if SPY tries to get a counter trend rally now, and we'll see how high it ends up going thanks to that. We're still seeing extreme greed on these different indicators, but when it comes to market volatility, the VIX is now on extreme fear. When people become super fearful, this is when you want to become a little bit more greedy. So just be kind of careful. All right. So with the market, we got this big drop as we predicted. The exact level was, at least we came very close to calling it. What do I see on SPY now? What is my prediction? So let me just be clear. I am not a genie or a fortune teller. I don't know what CPI will be. So I can't make any promises. And I want you guys to be open minded for anything. But the truth is, I am leaning a bit more bullish for tomorrow, or at least I think we're going to at least test some higher levels. And let me elaborate on why that is. So the first thing is, from a technical standpoint, we have a nice breakout from this falling wedge. Additionally, the latest pieces of CPI data have all been decent. Whether it's truthful or not, that's up to you to decide. But ultimately, this data has been decent for the markets. The markets dropped very hard without getting much of a bounce, so we're finally starting to see that. On top of that, I just want to call out that we already got this bullish breakout for this falling wedge, and the market is looking a bit more bullish, approaching the CPI report. So I would say the odds do favor us pushing a bit higher for tomorrow, but this doesn't mean the move will last forever. It could always just pop and then come back down later on. So for SPY, watch support currently at 511.7, and eventually 510 as critical support if that breaks. Resistance, you want to see it break 512.5. If that breaks, our next target is to be all the way up to 513.5 and eventually 515. I would say, in my opinion, if CPI comes out decent, we could go all the way up to 515 tomorrow. I think it could happen. But this depends on different factors. Now, if we do get some kind of counter trend rally, I want you guys to pay very close attention to where we end up topping at, because SPY could be in a downtrend. If it is in a downtrend, right, you want to see it could go all the way back up to like these high levels. But if it fails to break this high at 518, if it comes up like this, or if it just retests 518 and it starts sinking again, this could establish still a lower high. So even if it pushes another, 5-6 points, we could still be on a downtrend overall. That's the thing that I just wanted to call out. This does not mean SPY is going to continue the uptrend quite yet. So what this means is SPY could still push higher, and I do favor that for tomorrow. I think we might get to at least 514, if not 515, and I think that that's going to be my target. And that's what I'm predicting. But just to be safe, always be open minded on a day like this. And don't solely just trade based off technicals on a day like this as well. I just favor this based off this liquidity that was grabbed down here, the fact that we're trying to get a counter trend rally, the fact that CPI has been decent overall, and the fact that we're getting a bullish technical breakout from the falling wedge. So that makes me favor upside slightly more. For the QQQ, Now, if we're bearish on the QQQ, you want to see this thing lose 438 and make its way down to 436. If we're bullish, you want to see it break out towards 440. Oh, you know what, guys? There's one thing I forgot on SPY to mention. One more thing I forgot to mention. I'm sorry about this, guys. Same thing on the QQQ. But basically, we also have an inverse head and shoulders. I forgot to mention this on SPY. So there's an inverse head and shoulders also developing. So technicals look very bullish, and the full measured move would take us all the way up to the 514s. So that's another reason why I called that out. So technicals do look a bit more bullish on SPY. Anyway, same thing on the QQQ. We have an inverse head and shoulders like structure. This could bring us all the way back up to 440 plus, if not 442. And we have a gap to fill above. So I have a feeling that the QQQ might end up getting a push. Now, if we're bearish, if we lose 438, we could sink all the way down to 434 off a hot CPI. If CPI is decent, we're going to be expecting 440. In my opinion, I think that 440 plus is coming, and we might see at least 442. So we might see a little counter trend move. That does not mean the QQQ is going to break all-time highs. It could approach them again, but then make its way back down. So I predict a bounce is coming. So watch for that on the QQQ. For Tesla, now Tesla's kind of like in a position of its own because it's so dependent on the news. Now we have this interesting structure right here on Tesla where it's kind of just range bound. But if the market gets a nice counter trend move, we could see Tesla try to retest 180 and try to push a little bit higher if we try to hold that, so long as there's no major bad news, as Tesla's been getting a lot of it last week. So Tesla could be retesting 180 plus, try to push a little bit higher. If it breaks 182, we could be pushing all the way back up towards this gap fill, which is going to be closer towards the 187 area. But I'm not going to count on that quite yet. Let's just see if Tesla could get a bounce or not. In my opinion, with the market potentially bouncing, this could help Tesla. If we're bearish after CPI, we have to lose 175 and start pushing down to 172, if not 168. But I do favor this thing trying to rebound with the market, at least for now, based off technicals. For Nvidia, now Nvidia is the stock I'm not as confident about because technicals aren't that great on it because it's been downtrending a bit. It could still bounce with the market, of course, but I'm just saying from technicals, it's not looking as strong. So if we're bearish on Nvidia, you want to see it basically lose 850. If we lose that, 844 is coming and in lower levels. If we're bullish, you want to see it break 872. If that breaks, a bigger push could be coming to 885 and eventually 900. I think that because CPI is like in this position, Nvidia is in this position right here. There's a very good chance we might get a little counter trend like move. So we'll see if we could get a bounce on Nvidia. I'll be watching for that very, very closely. For Apple stock, it's looking a bit more bullish to me, and this could actually help the market because right here we got a technical breakout. So we have a nice accumulation structure right here, right? We're pushing up towards resistance in the 174 area. We came back down, and look at what we ended up testing. Basically, when you go back on the chart like this, there's a yellow trend line I drew out for quite some time. And the yellow trend line is basically where Apple has been getting rejected many times, right? Rejection, 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 right? And then finally today we did something different. So this is actually a sign of strength on Apple. So this is an accumulation schematic that's kind of like developing. And then what's happening is this kind of resembles like an inverse head and shoulders, right? We have this left shoulder here, a head, a right shoulder. You can even interpret this as like a cup and handle, whatever you want to say, it works. But what happened was we broke past the yellow trend line resistance, came back down to backtest, and now we're trying to get a technical breakout. So this looks bullish to me, especially because we didn't finish filling this gap, so we could push towards 175. If we're bearish, we need to lose the yellow trend line and push back below 170.9 and start sinking down. If we're bullish, we want to see it break 175, and then we can start pushing. We have to break the high, then hit 175, and then start pushing higher. My gut tells me we could be looking for a nice move to the upside very, very soon. So Apple is favoring bulls somewhat more. Anyways, when it comes to other moves out there, I just want to say that based off the way the market is moving, when it comes to Rivian, okay, looking at Rivian thus far, Rivian, in my opinion, is just kind of consolidating, not looking as great, but CPI could help it to some extent. So if we end up coming down, we could actually backtest 12.34, then attempt to get a bounce into the 13s after that. But there might be a little retracement maybe during the pre-markets tomorrow, and maybe after CPI comes out, we could still get a bounce. So if we lose 12.12, we turn bearish, and we could be sinking towards 11.05. If we hit 12.34, which I think we might, then we might bounce. We could make our way back up to 13.6 and eventually 14.34. I think the most likely possibility is we kind of retrace a bit, then we get a bounce. I think the market might get a technical bounce. This could help Rivian retest 12.34, then bounce. For SoFi is still on a nice uptrend. CPI is going to have a big effect on this. If we're bullish, we're going to be testing 8 and eventually 8.2. If we're bearish, we're going to be retracing all the way down here towards, I'd say 7.5, then 7.4. My gut tells me it's going to be upside, but we'll just have to wait and see. For ARM, okay, if ARM breaks 127.5, we could be trying to push to about 130 plus than 132. If we end up breaking down, you're going to be watching 124 as support and 122.5. My guts tells me that even though this thing is looking bearish from a technical standpoint, CPI could be the difference maker, and this thing could try to make its way back up to 130, at least just temporarily. So watch for that very carefully. For super micro, I think that it grabbed liquidity down here to 1,025, and it might be getting ready for a counter trend move. We have to try to break 1100 first. If we break 1100, the 20 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, we're going to be pushing all the way up to about 1150 if we break 1100. So we have to be testing that. I think we're going to test that tomorrow, and we'll see if it breaks. If it breaks, then we can start pushing higher. For Palantir looks to me like it's trying to hold this 50 EMA. It might rebound towards 25.78. If we lose 25, we're going to be sinking to about 24.25, and my gut tells me it might try to rebound a little bit. For the IWM Russell 2000, if we break 206, a bigger push is going to be coming to about 207. And if we lose 204.73, a bigger drop is coming. My gut tells me that the 50 EMA is going to try to hold, and then 206 is coming, and then push right back up. So I think it might bounce thanks to CPI. So we'll just have to wait and see, especially as we have this gap to fill above. So it might be pushing to 206.5. Let's see what else is there. We have Microsoft. Exactly as predicted. I told you yesterday it might come down, test 402, and then we could bounce off that. What did we do? We hit 402, and then we bounced exactly as predicted. So if we're bullish, watch 407 break. If that breaks, 410 is coming. If we're bearish, you want to see it reject off here and come back down towards 403.5. If we lose that, then 401.6 is coming. Since we're nearing a bullish cross in the PPO, the odds do favor at least 407 plus to 410. So it might try to push a little bit higher. For AMD, it came down lower exactly as we predicted. We were anticipating that it would come down like this. But now that it's testing this EMA, we have to see if we can try to get back above 199, the 50 EMA. If we achieve that, we could retest 205, but we have to wait and see. We're still looking very weak on the chart. Can we try to get back above 199? If we do achieve that, we could be pushing for 205. So watch that support very, very carefully. It could try to bounce to 205 depending on CPI, so we'll just have to wait and see. But just to be safe, I'm going to be very patient. The VIX, even though this thing pushed up to 16, it got a rejection candlestick on the 4-hour time frame, and we could see a little retracement on it, meaning the market may temporarily bounce, causing that to happen. So watch to see if that's the case. The dollar is pushing, but it happens to be approaching the 20 EMA, which is where it rejected last time. So this green line right here, you guys see the green line? That is around 102.94. If this pushes and rejects off this, gets a temporary drop, this could be bullish for the market. So just wait and see. For Coinbase is looking kind of like it's coming back down. We're still above 250. If we lose 250, there's 248 and eventually lower levels like 235, which become possibilities. It's starting to show a little bit of weakness after it pushed so much. So this was bound to happen. So we'll see how well this ends up performing, but it might get a big reaction after CPI. If we're bullish, we could hit 265. If we're bearish, we could be losing 250 and start sinking. I think that 260 could be retested, and then we'll see if we get a rejection or not. Google is still trying to be bullish, but we're going to approach 141 as resistance. We might tag that tomorrow, and we'll see if we reject or not. For support, watch 136.5. If we lose this, a bigger drop is coming. I think that 141 could be tested, so it might push a little bit, and we'll see what happens. For Amazon's looking a little bit weak, guys. I do think it's possible we get a little counter trend move on Amazon, but don't forget the bigger picture is still showing a head and shoulders like structure, still not looking the best. So maybe it pops back up to 174, but if it rejects off this, it could continue to sink back down to 167. There's still a head and shoulders on Amazon, so I'm not too confident it's going to make a big move to the upside. Could pop a little bit, but then eventually reject. And finally, for Meta, we're looking very weak after a big drop, but it could try to make its way back up to about 490, if not 494. So we'll see if we can retest that, then get a rejection or not. So we'll see how things go for Meta. With that being said, guys, let's see a little counter trend move in the markets, especially for some tech stocks out there. Market is pushing, approaching CPS. So we'll see if we get a bounce or not. And I'm just going to be very patient. I'm always open minded to anything, of course. I'm not solely just favoring one view. But I just want to make it clear. I think that it's more probable we do see the upside, despite the fact that I'm open minded to anything. And that's what I predict is most likely going to happen based off like technicals, based off previous data, and based off things like that. All right, so that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning to discuss how CPI looks. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day and peace out.